He took her. He did not decide it with his head. His head was still listing the reasons against it when his hands reached out and closed around her arm and brought her down into the boat. 22 years of meeting Era in the fog had worn a groove in him deeper than caution, and the groove ran one way only, toward the thing he had not done. And now that the chance had come again in the shape of the stranger, he found that his body would not let him fail it twice. "Sit," he said roughly, "low, in the bottom, and hold whatever that is still." He shoved off the jetty with the oar, and the lamp smear swung away behind them, and the white closed over the boat like a lid. The riders reached the jetty perhaps a minute later. He heard the hooves clatter onto the boards, heard the shouting, heard a man bellow out across the water for the ferryman to come back in the name of the Margrave. But sound goes strange in that fog, flattened and turned about, and Bevan had spent 40 years learning how strange, and he rode steady and silent into the blindness on a heading he could have held in his sleep, and the jetty and its angry men dissolved into the white as though they had never been. For a moment he let himself believe it would be that easy. Then, behind them, he heard the heavy splash and grind of a boat being run down the shingle and launched, and oars finding their rhythm, and he understood that the Margrave's men had taken the other ferry, old Pell's boat, moored at the next slip, and were coming after them across the strait. The woman, Marin, crouched in the bottom of the boat with the bundle, and as they pulled out into the deep middle where the fog grew thickest and the shores both vanished, the strait began to do its work. Bevan felt it first, as he always did, the cold gathering, and then she came. Era, 19, her face forming in the vapor off the bow the way it had 10,000 times, looking at him with that patient sorrow that was worse than any reproach. But this time, he was not alone with her, and he saw the stranger's head come up sharply, saw her stare into the fog and go rigid, saw her lips move around a name that was not Era's, and he understood that the fog had found her dead too, and was giving them back to her in the white. Marin made a sound he knew well, the sound the strait pulls out of people, and clutched the bundle harder against her, and in the thinning and shifting of the mist, Bevan caught, for half a breath, what the fog was surfacing around her. A man's raised hand, a room, blood, and the small, specific wail of a very young child, before the images frayed back into vapor. So, a child, then, in the bundle. He had half known it from the shape and the stillness, and blood behind her, and a raised hand, and a name she said into the fog with grief and not with guilt, or so it seemed to him, though the fog showed truth slant, and a desperate woman may grieve the man she has wronged as easily as the man who wronged her. The crossing was perhaps 8 minutes more. Behind them, closing, came the dip and pull of the pursuer's oars, and Bevan, rowing hard now, his old shoulders burning, felt the whole of the rest of it narrow to a single question he had to answer before the far shore. What kind of crossing this was going to be? He could put everything into speed and ask nothing. He could bend his back and row as he had not rowed in 20 years, drive the boat through the fog on the heading only he knew, use every trick of the strait, the false channels, the dead air where sound vanished, the rocks a stranger's boat would founder on. To lose the pursuers in the white, and put this woman and her child on the far shore alive, and never once make her tell him what was in her past, because it did not matter. A frightened woman with a child, hunted by the Margrave's men, was all the truth he needed, and he would not slow the boat by a single stroke to learn the rest. To see first, and judge never. Or he could stop rowing and learn the truth, because the last time Bevan had acted on half a story he had acted wrongly, had told Era to wait in the strength of his own fear and a careful man's half-reasoning, and he had sworn in the 22 years since that he would never again decide a life without facing it whole. He could ship the oars, here in the blind heart of the strait, with the pursuer's oars growing louder, and make Marin tell him everything, all of it, the man and the blood and the child, and what she truly was, and decide what kind of mercy she had earned with his eyes open, even though every second the boat sat still was a second the hunters gained, even though demanding the truth in the middle of a rescue might be the most dangerous indulgence of his life. to know what to was Sazy before he finished saving it.